So welcome everyone to our session today. I'm excited about this one because it definitely covers a lot of automation that we can be using through our Microsoft account and the app called Power Automate and Microsoft Teams and Outlook and different apps that coordinate with doing different approvals and sign-offs. So first off, I'm going to go to my Microsoft account and I'm going to be starting in Power Automate. So let me go to my apps launcher at the top left. If you use it on a more regular basis, you probably want to have it as a shortcut. Otherwise, you can just click on the icon for Power Automate from here. So Microsoft 365 has different areas that we can actually be taking advantage of using automation with approvals and sign off. So one of the places is going to be within Power Automate, but there are a few other places that we can utilize as well. So we'll be walking through some of those other avenues as well today. So to get us started here, first off, when it comes to using Microsoft 365, for our approval process, right there on the first page of your handout, you're going to find some information about popular cases where approvals can be used. So when it comes to when would you ever use an approval, we could use it for a lot of different things. We can use it for policy reviews. We write a new policy and we need to have it approved by other people. We could send the file, and we're going to see different ways that we can actually do that today. Project proposals. So we could actually send a proposal directly to a specific person and have them sign off on it. Event approvals, any type of document approvals, whether it's going to be invoicing, it's going to be contracts, it's going to be reports. Leave requests, very popular to use it with leave requests. So if somebody needs to request some time off of work for whatever reason, we could have that part of a workflow that is sent for approval. Expense reports are a very common one as well, and purchase orders. So if you have a purchase order and it needs to be sent for approval, you could do that as well. We can even do batch sending. So like if I have 5 invoices that need to be approved by a specific manager before we pay the invoices, well, I could send 5 invoices at one time to the appropriate party that needs to approve them and have those all be approved and really kind of go through a workflow to send the information back to say if they were approved or rejected. So kind of a cool little process that we'll be walking through. So other things that we can use it for and kind of how this would work when we talk about the key components to our Microsoft 365 approvals. We send in a approval request. There's going to be an action that is going to go along with that. So first we have to say, this is what needs to be approved. And then here's the action we're going to give them. They can approve, reject, they can leave comments, those kind of things. And then it gets sent back, whether they approved or rejected it. But during all of that, it actually is tracked. It's a pretty cool feature. You'll see demonstrations of that here today, where we can actually see where we are within that approval process. So we could see, I sent this for approval, and it's pending approval. It's been approved, it's been rejected. We're going to see how we have different apps that we can actually use to see all the things that we've sent or all the approvals that we've received and how we can respond to them. And where do they notify us that we even have these? You'll see how that all kind of works here today. So what are really some benefits of using Microsoft 365 for approvals? Well, the big one is, for me, the integration with all of our apps. So we have the ability to use Power Automation tools, either directly from the apps themselves, the Power Automate apps, or by going simply to places like SharePoint or Microsoft Teams and using these approval processes through those different avenues. So they're more efficient Could you imagine back in the day when we used to have to, if I had a document that needed to be approved, I remember having to print it out and then give it to the first person to sign. And if it needed to be signed by more than one person, then we'd have to go track down the other person. And if they weren't in our same building, or, what if they were in a different city? We could either inter-office mail it, or we had to mail it and then wait for them to send it back, or they would fax back and forth. The days of doing things like that are really gone. So now we have more efficient ways of doing things. The consistency of how the items are being tracked and where they're being saved at, where they're being utilized through, all of that can stay consistent. Plus, we have that transparency of seeing what the status of things are and the history of approvals that we've had in the past. So what tools integrate with Power Automate for these types of processes? Well, there's definitely Microsoft services that we can be using, including SharePoint, Teams, Outlook, Excel, Forms. There's, pretty much all apps, OneDrive, they can all be used in some way if we choose to use them. But there's also third-party apps that can also be used. If you have a license for some of these other third-party options, like Dropbox, Salesforce, Adobe, Acrobat, you'll see some of these I do have available because I do have extra licenses for those. Slack I don't use, but I do have Adobe Acrobat, so you'll see that a little bit later when we're in the Microsoft Approvals app. But there's a lot of integration that we can have back and forth in between our different applications to process these approvals. So what exactly can you use these for, and kind of what are the scenarios behind them? How does this all work? Well, if we have an invoice that needs to be approved, a work order, sales quotes, those types of things, the steps are going to be that we create a trigger. So an example of that would be when a new document is added to a SharePoint library. That could be the trigger. As soon as a new document is added, it sends an approval request to the designated approver. So whoever we set it up to say they need to approve this file as soon as it goes in that document library. So an example of that would be if we have invoices that need to be approved, they go into the manager's folder, and as soon as they go into that manager's folder, it notifies the manager that they have these files that need to be approved. That would be an example of that. The outcome, of course, is going to be the update the document status in SharePoint and notify the requester. So the requester is going to get a notification back letting them know if the document was approved or rejected. Kind of that same scenario with a vacation request. So if we want to have a form, or whatever the case would be, a SharePoint list that we need to have their manager approve when they request to have time off, we can do that by using Power Automate with the approval process directly through SharePoint lists or through a form. And we'll see a little bit of examples of that here today. Expense report workflow, kind of that same thing where we need somebody to approve a document. When the employee submits a expense report, whether it's in a SharePoint list, it's in a SharePoint document library, it's added to OneDrive, which I wouldn't do that type of process probably in OneDrive, but SharePoint or Microsoft Teams. The action would be that it automatically sends the approval to the appropriate parties. And then, of course, whoever it is, they approve or reject it, and we get that same outcome. So the outcome is the same also if we had purchase orders, etc. So we want to be able to really take advantage of what Microsoft has to offer in all these different processes. So let's actually take a look at how some of this is going to work for you. So I'm just going to do first a general overview of what exactly is Power Automate. So Power Automate, which is in your handout, let me tell you exactly which page number that's on. In your handout, starting on page 2, it talks about Microsoft 365 Power Automate. So Power Automate is this wonderful option that we have that allows us to be able to not only do approvals, but it has a lot of other components to it as well. So let's just get a little comfortable with what we're seeing on the screen for this. So when you open up the Microsoft app called Power Automate, on the left-hand side, you have this first group where there's a line here. All these on the top can all be extremely helpful for you to understand different ways that you can send things for approval and what can happen to things afterwards. We can even have multiple directions. We can have conditionals where if it matches this condition, do this, but if it matches this condition, do that. That's getting a little bit beyond our scope today, but just so you know, it's capable of doing that. So what do you see when you come into the home category? So from this home category on the right-hand side, you're going to see where it says create your automation with Copilot. So we could just simply take one of the prompt suggestions or type in a description of what it is that we're looking at needing to create for a workflow. So we could say, we need a workflow that is going to take a SharePoint document and send it to somebody to approve, blah, blah, blah. We could type in whatever it is we're looking for. That would be one way to get started. But notice in the middle of this window in this home category, learning for every level, you could go through these different video recordings of different types of training on using these elements. We also have the learn on the left-hand side as well. If you click learn, this is going to take you into a deeper option of learning how to use Power Automate. So you can see as soon as I click on that link, it takes me to this Microsoft Power Automate documentation where we can start in the getting started and then go into what's new, look at different training modules that they have available, etc. So just so you know what you'll get when you click learn. But on the left-hand side, we have this great option here called create. When you come into create, this is where you can create a workflow. A workflow can include that approval process. So the first thing that you're going to see is there's actually 3 different ways to create a flow. One is going to be starting from blank. So if you're familiar with how Power Automate works, we can have an automated workflow that is triggered by something happening. So a new document is added. A new entry is made in this Excel spreadsheet. That could be the automatic trigger that says, then do the next step. We can also have an instant cloud flow, a scheduled cloud flow. So you can see that we have these different options for getting started from scratch, basically. But I usually don't when it comes to approvals. I don't usually do anything from scratch. A lot of times for me, I'm going to use a template. Now we'll get into these templates a little bit deeper here, but just so you can see, there's a couple of different categories listed at the top. On the right-hand side, you could search all the templates, but as you scroll down, there's an end to just this limited list right now of templates. So one is to do a from scratch workflow. Second is to do a workflow from a template. Underneath that, you'll find start from a connector. So we could say, I want to start a brand new workflow that is going to use SharePoint. And that can be the app that I want to connect to create this workflow, to send out an approval for whatever the case might be, approving my SharePoint site, approving the news, whatever. So we could choose any of these applications to get started with a connector. To be honest, I don't usually do that, and I don't usually start from blank. I usually start from a template. So on the left-hand side, just so you can see, there is this category called templates. So this is going to be the full window with multiple categories going across the top. As you can see, there's a lot more categories here than we saw back in the create window. There's alphabetized, or I shouldn't say alphabetized, but a list of all the templates, and then there's all these different categories. And on the right-hand side, there's a ... for more, so we can't see every category depending on the resolution of your monitor. So just so you can see, there's a ton of different options available that we could use. Or you could just simply search. But how does this actually work? Well, when you look at these little tiles, just to explain what you're seeing before we dive into doing an example of one of these, when you look at these little tiles, it's going to show you the icons for the applications that need to be used that you need to have a license for or be connected to be able to create an actual workflow. So if we want to create an approval workflow, if we use this one, save Outlook.com email attachments to your OneDrive, I would need to have access to Outlook and to OneDrive. Now, of course, that one doesn't have anything to do with approvals, but just so you're kind of seeing what this tile gives you. What I'm going to do is go to the category called approval. So when we go to the category called approval, you can see all these different tiles of aspects that you can get started with. You don't have to start from blank and have to understand how to actually build a workflow and understand all this other programming and these different things behind the scenes. These are much easier to use, but depends on what it is that you need. Start an approval when a file is added to SharePoint is an option, but I could actually create something like that directly in SharePoint as well. So I don't always come here to Power Automate to create the workflow. Sometimes I do it directly from the application. And we're going to see demonstrations of doing it here, a demonstration of doing it in SharePoint and in Microsoft Teams, just so you get a good idea as to how these can be utilized. So in your handout, I did give you an example of using one of these. That is called, let me go to my note here. This one is actually going to be, the example that I'm going to do for you right now is, we're going to do the one called Start an Approval when a response is submitted in Forms, just so you could see how that one could work. Now, of course, I could sit and read through each of these and try and find one that I'm looking for. But sometimes it's easier just to actually go to the top and search for it as well. But as you can see, as I scroll down, there's quite a few. So request approval from Business Central on sales. Here's a request a day off. Create a DocuSign envelope. So there's all these different options that we have available. Well, the one that I'm actually looking for, it's in this list, but I'm not 100% sure where it is. But let's say that I want to just search for this. I'm going to copy that text so I don't have to retype it. But up at the top, I could just simply put in what it is that I'm looking for, press enter, and it will show the results of whatever it is I was searching for. So approve a Microsoft form response to add a row to an Excel spreadsheet, or I could use start an approval when a response is submitted in a form. That's the one I'm going to click. So once you find the template that is related to what it is you want to do, all you have to do is click on the icon, click on that tile. It automatically has to connect to multiple apps. These are all 365 apps that is using this forms, and it's using Microsoft 365. It's using approvals, and it's going to utilize Microsoft Teams. So you can see that I have connected to each of those so I can continue. So it basically is going to walk you through a wizard. I'm going to click continue, and then it says the ID of the form you want to monitor. So which form do I want to be working with? So the form has to already have been created. So you would go to your Microsoft Forms, create the form, and then create this approval process. So I can click on my arrow and it shows me a list of my available forms. So let's say that I want it to be based on change in benefits. Somebody has a change in their benefits and it needs to be approved. So down at the bottom where it says approvals, approval type, click on that drop down, and then you can choose, do you want custom responses? Do you want sequential responses? Do we want to just use approve, reject? And is it going to be for everybody must approve it for the whole thing to be approved? Or does just the first person that does it, if they approve it, then it's approved by basically, you don't have to go through everybody, because you can have multiple approvers and we can have it do it in sequence. This person approves or rejects, then it automatically goes to the next person, etc., etc. I'm just going to say first to respond. Then I'm going to click create. So what's going to happen then is we need to give the approvals a title, and then we can use that approval for every single time a form item is added. It will automatically send an approval. But who is it being sent to? Well, that's where this part comes into play. So when you start with this, it needs to have further details. This could be a whole class on its own, just understanding how Power Automate works. So in this grid that we're in right now, up at the top, I basically start at the top and work my way down each of these elements. So it says when a new response is submitted, and it says I have invalid parameters. So it basically is telling me that my form ID was inaccurate. So I could pick a form and go in and find whatever form it is that I wanted to use. So for some reason it didn't recognize the form. I might have deleted it. Let's say I want to do a purchase order form. Now it has that connected, so it's no longer gray shaded or giving me an error. Then I can go to get my profile, and I can go to the left-hand side. I can go into my parameters. I can go into my settings, make any changes that I need to. I could go into advanced parameters where I could select different fields. Let me show you that. Let me click show all so you can see. I could select based on who the person is, what their job title is, what their department is, those kind of things. Then I have to go into create an approval because it says that I have an invalid parameter and it didn't understand my approval type. So I'm going to re-enter that. I don't know why it's not doing a very good job on this today, but anyway, that's okay. But then I can put in a title. What's going to be the title for this approval? I can put in who is this assigned to? And I just really kind of go down that list. So if I want to assign this to myself, it will go through my global address list and find everybody that starts with those names. We could put in details. We could put in a link to the item if there were. Enable notifications. That's turned on by default. But it's really a matter of going through each one of the steps in the grid, click on it to open up a pane on the left-hand side that will give you the further details. So it has an invalid connection, so it's telling me that my approvals isn't connected. So let me go out there and make sure approvals is connected. Okay, so it looks like, oops, sorry. Click change, I'm going to add a new one. So I'm waiting for that. Oh, I've reached my maximum number of connections for approvals. I don't know why I'm getting that right now. Probably because I did a million of these already today. But anyway, just so you can see, this is something you need to have a better grasp on to understand how do I actually, what do I need to put in for each of these separate details. That's where Copilot on the right-hand side can come in handy because you could go and ask Copilot to help you fill out any of these to get a better understanding. But once you've gone through any, video training and things, it does help 100% on kind of getting a better understanding. Now, why am I not fulfilling this? Well, because I don't always do it this way. We have other ways that we could actually do these. So I don't always do it through Power Apps, through Power Automate. Most of the time for me, I go directly to the application that I want to work with. Now, I did pick just a few other apps. I did pick Forms as being one of them, but I could do an approval for a form directly within Microsoft Forms. But the ones I want to demonstrate are a little bit more popular, and those are going to include SharePoint document libraries, SharePoint lists, and Microsoft Teams. So I'll demonstrate those in our class today, but just so you know, Forms can also be used. If you want any extra help with that, just let us know and we can get you some help on that. But anyway, back to the Power Automate window. I'm going to go ahead and leave this without saving it or anything, just so you're aware of what you see on the left-hand side. I got new earbuds, sorry, and they keep falling out of my ears. They don't fit very well. But anyway, if you come to the category on the left-hand side called My Flows, when you have created any flows in workflows in Power Automate, you'll be able to access those here. So if you did create that workflow for that form, it would show up in this list. You have cloud forms, so different categories at the top. You have desktop flows. It will show you any generative, which is in preview right now. It's not an active feature yet. Or you could see flows that have been shared with you. So just so you know, you have all these different categories. Or you could actually create a new flow by going to the top left of the right-hand side of the window, and you could choose what type of a flow you want to create. Same as being on the home category or in the create category, but just so you can see what you get from there. But there's one more piece that isn't on the left-hand side by default that I would highly recommend that you add. If you go to the more category, the ... for more, you can see that you can customize the navigation pane on the left-hand side, just like we do in Teams and Outlook and that kind of thing. If you wanted to add any of these other power tools, you could add them. The one that I'm going to add is approvals. I'm going to click the push pin next to approvals, so it adds the shortcut for that app available here on my navigation pane. Not that I come to Power Automate to use it very much. I actually use it through Teams more so, but I'll demonstrate that in a minute. But if I come into approvals, this is going to allow me to see anything that I had done directly through Power Apps that was part of approvals. So I only have a few that were actually done. So I have some that I've received, some that I've sent, and then I have this history. History will give me a history of all of my previous ones that I've done. So you could see when it was received, when it was completed, who requested it, what was the outcome. And these are all my test ones that I do during training. So I have quite a few, and they were all requested by me to me so that I can show how they actually work. So I like having this approvals app available here. So now that I pinned it on the left-hand side, it will always be here. But like I said, unless I'm coming into Power Automate to go back to an existing flow that I created, make changes to it, or create a brand new one, I don't always come into it from here. So in a minute, when I get to Teams, I'll show you a different way to access these approvals and be able to create new ones directly through the app in Teams. Okay? But in the meantime, I want to show you another option that we have available. Let me just get this on my screen here. There we go. What I'm going to do, yes, I'm sorry. Did somebody have a question?
We do have a question. I think you might actually just be about to delve into it, but just in case you're not, someone is asking, where do you create approvals? Which is kind of a big question. Yeah.
It is huge. Now, one of them is through Power Automate. Mm-hmm. So what I was just talking about would be an option if you truly understand how Power Automate works with having to put in all of those details in that grid view. Mm-hmm. This is a little bit easier. If I go to a SharePoint site, so let's say that I have, I guess I'm in a different browser. Gotta go to my other browser. If I go to a SharePoint site, so I have this SharePoint site called Clinic. When I come into this Clinic site, I have document libraries and I have Microsoft lists. I could create approvals directly through those pieces of SharePoint. So this is where probably the number one approval process happens, is actually in a document library. So here in this Clinic site, I'm going to go to the left-hand side to this document library called Legal Documents. I can create a request for approval directly on a file. So let's say that I've been working on a file and I have this Excel dashboard. Well, actually, let me go to this one. This completed risk registry. Before we proceed with the project, I need to have this file approved by the manager. I don't have to do that through Power Automate. I can do it directly here. I can right-click on the file name or just simply go to the ... menu. Either way, It opens up your pane with all of your different choices to manage that specific file. One of the choices that I have is I can actually go to this feature called Automate, and you can see that from this Automate, one of my options is going to be flows. Now, I can do this with the entire document library to say, if any files get added to this document library, I need to approve them first. So I could, and I'll show you where that's located at if you wanted to do something for the entire document library. But right now, I'm just going to do a flow for this file because I need to send it to my manager for approval before I can proceed with the project. So I'm going to click Request Sign Off. This is the #1 approval workflow built right into SharePoint, so we don't have to understand Power Automate and how all those pieces work. It's going to open up this Run Flow window on the right-hand side where we can choose one or more people that we want to send this to. Now, how is it going to send it? Well, it's actually going to send it via Outlook and Microsoft Teams. I'll show you both examples. So I'm going to send it to myself. And in this message box on the right, I'm going to type in my email. So I would say something like, please review this file and approve or reject it, something like that. So you're going to type in the message that with the information that you need to give them to let them know you want them to look over the file and approve or reject it. What they will get, both in Teams and in Outlook, is they will end up getting an email with a link and a post with a link in Teams. So at the bottom, that's all I'll put in my email, but I'm going to click Run Flow. This is what is called an instant flow. So it immediately just sent it. Now, like I said, it sent it to Teams and it sent it to Outlook. If I go to Microsoft Teams, just to show you how this works, if I go to Microsoft Teams, as soon as it comes available, it will come to my activities here. There it came in. So it takes a second for it to send it, but this is what I received. Jolynn Reen sent you a request. Please approve, and it gives me the file name. When I click on it, it opens the approval, the hierarchy of the history of this approval. So what this is referring to is it says, please approve, and then it's got what I put in for my email. Then it's showing the attachment of that file that they can click on, review the file, and you can see the status of it, which, by the way, back in the document library, it has a column for the status for this approval. I'll show you that when I go back in there, but just so you know that it's got it pending right now. But once I approve or reject this, in the status column for this approval back in the document library, it will show if it was approved or rejected. Right now, pending. But anyway, down at the bottom, once I approve or once I read over the document, I can come down and add comments. I could say something like, this file is ready to distribute. Whatever it is that I want to respond to back, and then I can click approve or reject. I'm going to go ahead and click approve. So that tracks that this has been approved. They're going to get a notification back letting them know that the file was approved. It also changes it in the document library. But here in Teams, what did this just do? Well, this actually opened the approvals app. So right now you can see, here's the one that I just did, and the status was it was approved. If the source was SharePoint, direct into SharePoint, you can see that it would say the source. Otherwise, here's when it was created, it was sent by, and it was sent to. Now, of course, all of mine were sent by me and sent to me, but yours would be the appropriate information. So it automatically shows the approval app direct. But what's happening back in that SharePoint document library? Well, let me go back to that legal document. In this column that is automatically added to your document library the very first time that you send a file for approval, it's going to give us this new column called sign off status. And you can see if it was approved, it's still pending, or if it were rejected, you would see that information. So I like having that because then that helps you keep track of things that way. But what was happening back in Outlook? If I go to Microsoft Outlook, just so you can see this, it also sent an email, not just Teams. So you could do it in Teams or you could come to Outlook. So here in Outlook, by the way, sorry, it shows this because it was approved. So it says Jolynn signed off on this item. The file is ready to distribute with my comments, still gives a link to the file. But what I had originally received was please approve, just like I got in Teams, same concept. And it's giving me a link to the file. So it is great that it notifies us in more than one place, not just Teams. We got it in both Teams and in Microsoft Outlook. Love that way that it does that. So this would be an option for you to use as far as, how do I take this information and send this file to be approved for, by these people, whatever the case would be. That's going to be the number one option that you will ever use, just so you're aware. But there are a few other things that are built into SharePoint that I just wanted to mention. If you go, and I'm not going to be selected on a file anymore, I'm going to go to the menu at the top here in this document library. You can see that I have Automate. If I go to this Automate, I can get into flows and I could create a new flow. I could go to rules and I could create a new rule. But we also have a brand new feature called Quick Steps. But before I do that, and this is in your handout, you want to go into Configure Approvals. If it isn't enabled, you won't see this column for approvals. So I'm going to slide that button over and click Apply. It's now going to add a new column for approval status. Because if I do a different workflow through a rule, it could show the approval status here. Matthew, did someone have a question?
Yeah, so someone was wondering, so if you're creating an approval with Microsoft Forms, can you create approval so that depending on the way someone responds to a form, they get different approval responses? Is that a possible automation?
Absolutely.
Nice.
They have to use looping and conditions with those when you create it through Power Automate. So that isn't something that can be done with one of these simple built-in options. That is something that would have to be developed through Power Automate, but the answer is definitely yes.
Definitely
yes. It is amazing. So if they say yes to this question, it will trigger to send an approval to this person. Or if they say no, they might have to answer a couple more questions, then it can have an approval. So it can have a lot of different scenarios built into it.
And this doesn't have to be the same person every time. This can be anyone in your organization or people even outside your organization.
Technically, it could be people outside your organization if you have rights to do that.
Right.
Yes.
But then
it is super powerful. And yes, group emails.
Okay.
You can send it to group emails. I just saw that chat come through.
Okay, perfect. Yes. There we go. But this does have to be done within Power Automate. You cannot do this within Forms or any other app.
Yeah, not in the simple ways. Yeah, this is a little bit more complicated. And by the way, too, it can connect to your HR system. So it can know this person, their manager has to approve it. So they would need to go to their manager, or it would automatically know to go to that person's manager if we had that connected. It's pretty smart.
Yeah.
Hence the name Power.
And so someone just wants to add on top of that. So how do we add the Automate tab in the doc library?
It should be here automatically. If you're not seeing it, it's based on your screen resolution. So just go to the ... and you'll see Automate.
Okay.
Okay.
Great. Thank you.
Now back to the Automate for just a moment. If you go to rules, which I do have this in your handout as well, but if you go to rules and click create rule, we can say that if this happens, do this action. So we can say if a new file is added, we have to have it approved. So when I click on that, it gives you the options of what exactly needs to be filled out. So when a new file is added, is it always, or is it based on a condition, based on the type of file, that kind of thing? Otherwise, who is it going to send an email to, or is it going to set a specific value in a property someplace? We can enter in who the person is, and we could say that it's based on the person that needs to approve this. It's based on me. I need to get an email every time a new file is added because I have to approve that file. I could put in a custom message and then click create. Every time a new file is added to that document library, I'm going to get an email notification, and then I have to come out here and approve that. So just so you can see, there's all these different options that can be used directly within the application. Quick Steps is new. This is available in a few different places, but this was just released. If I click Quick Steps and then go to create a quick step, I have different options that I could get started with. I could draft an email, I could start a chat, I could set a value, execute a flow, I could send an approval request, etc. And that's the one I'll click on, send an approval request. And then it wants to know this information. So I could change my mind on send an approval, but who am I sending the approval to? I'm going to say it's going to go to me, or it can go to properties within that file. I can give the quick step a name. I can also give, do I want this to have a confirmation or be sent immediately? I'm going to say I want to send this request immediately, and who has to approve it. So just so you know, these types of things can be used as well. So definitely check out these quick steps. We could do a whole session just on these new quick steps and the benefits of using those, but you're going to see the word approval in a lot of different places these days because they are very common. They are very common. But let me show you how you could use things in a list. Microsoft lists are very common as well. They're like an Excel spreadsheet / database. If you haven't used them before, you want to learn how to use them. They are fantastic, but they can have different columns. Like this happens to be a list of our company policies, and we have a due date on when they need to be updated. I have it set as a yearly kind of a thing, and I have a person that's responsible for that specific policy. Notice on the ribbon, I have automate. So I can go into flows. I can go, like I could set a reminder and put a due date for that reminder. I could go into rules and create a rule. I could go to quick steps and make a quick step for this as well. There's a lot of different choices that we have when it comes to working with these different power tools directly through an application. And just so you can see, I wanted to show you the integrate both in a document library and in a list. They both basically have similar aspects to them. But just so you could see, I could get to my Power Apps from here, my Power Automate. I could create a flow directly from here as well. But I'm going to kind of stick to my Automate. I'm going to go to Flows. Matthew, did somebody have a question? Probably.
Yes. Someone is wondering, if we don't see the configure approvals option, where do we set up configure approvals? The only option I had.
Mine came automatically.
You didn't have to pin it or anything?
No. When I come into.
They're saying the only option they have is setting up flow under template was standard approvals.
And was that in Power Automate, or is that here in SharePoint lists or SharePoint document libraries?
Yeah, I'm not too sure. Maybe we can save this question for the Q&A at the end of the session.
Yeah.
All right.
That would be good because I've got a lot of things in Teams I need to do. Standard approvals. Yep, it's not available there, unfortunately.
Okay.
Yeah, not available there. You have to come into a document library or a list. Okay. But just so you could see, if I come into rules and click create a rule, I get the same thing as if I were in a document library. Just so you could see, we could do that. Otherwise, just so you could see this as well, I have quick steps. So quick steps are available in both. I'm going to click create a quick step. Once again, I have these features where I could create a flow, I could do a chat, I could draft an email, I could set a value. So we're seeing a lot of these similarities from document libraries here over into lists. So we can approve list items as well, just like we do document libraries. So same things apply, and I do have all your information in your handouts on that. But we only have a couple minutes left, so I want to get to working with, just so you can see this, I want to show you how you can do things in Microsoft Teams as well, because Teams is a very big part of using approvals as well. So the first thing is, on the left-hand side, I'm going to go to Chats. I'm going to go to Chats. And I'm going to go to a previous chat that I have with the student one, which is a coworker of mine. I'm going to click on more options right next to the name in that list of chats. And just so you can see, we have workflows. So we can actually create a workflow directly from here to be related to the chat that I'm doing with this specific person. I'm going to go ahead and click on workflows, just so you can see what your choices are. So do I want to create a workflow that's going to find a meeting time, create planner tasks, or remind me of something, or give me a notification, post something, apply a template, and look at all these different templates. You know, post a chat every time something happens, post a team. So all these different workflows can actually be used directly through a chat. Very cool that we have that. But I want to take this just a little bit further. I won't walk through all of these because I want to show you how beneficial it can be to have the approval app pinned to the left-hand side. So if you go to your ... to view more apps, choose approval, click approvals. It will add the icon and open the app. But if you want the app to stay here, right click and then pin it. Otherwise, as soon as you go to something else in Teams, it will disappear. But once you pin it, you'll have access to this all the time. The middle part of the window, right now I am clicked on approvals. So I'm seeing the history of my sent and my received. So I've got these two tabs at the top. To change to see, here's the approvals I've received, here's the approvals that I've sent out. But I also have Adobe Acrobat, I have Document Sign, and I have SharePoint e-signature options as well. But just focusing on the approvals side of things for this is your Microsoft app called Approvals. It's different here than it is back in Power Automate. I do not know why. I get asked that all the time. I can't find an answer on the internet. I can't find anything from Microsoft. I put it in blogs and communities and nobody has answered yet. I'm hoping it changes, but here, not only can you see the status and what's going on with everything like you saw in the approval app in Power Automate, but also at the top right, I can add a new approval request. So I'm going to click on that new approval request, and I could use an org-wide if I have created an org-wide approval, which I have one that I've created for my entire organization to use. That is a more higher level than today's session on how to create these templates, but you can actually use templates and create templates to have available for your entire organization that are going to be a setup workflow for an approval. So this one called Leave, just so you can see what it does, if I click on it, once one is created, it will give you whatever you created behind the scenes with it. It can be a form that once the form is all filled out, it automatically gets sent to that person's manager or whoever they need to send it to. Oh, something went wrong. Okay, I'll have to check with that owner. Let me go back and do a basic one just to show you how this works. I'm going to come, and just so you know, I'm right now at the bottom left. I'm actually using the classic view. If I switch that button off, this is the typical view that you're going to see now, where up at the top, I'm on a new request. Otherwise, I can click templates. I'll show you that second. But under the new request, I'm going to keep it on basic, but otherwise I could do an e-signature, which is part of that SharePoint e-signature. First, you have to give it a name, and then you can choose require responses in the assigned order. So if I want to have multiple people approving a file or whatever the case would be, something added to a SharePoint list, I have all these options of what it is that I can fill out. So just to show you, I'm going to say require responses in this order, and then I'm going to choose who needs to approve it. I'm going to say Jolene. If I need to add anybody else, I could click add additional recipient, and maybe I want student 1 to also be notified of this. I could choose a priority, so I just kind of scroll down here and I can choose, and then I can add in additional details, which is information that they are going to receive with this request. By the way, some requests only by default go via email. Some requests by default only go to Teams. So just so you know, it's one or the other. Some of them do both. But either way, just so you can see, I would say something like, please review this file, blah, blah, blah. And then as I keep scrolling down, I would attach the file. So if I don't do this through a document library, I could do it through here. So it could be a OneNote, a OneDrive file, a SharePoint file, whatever the case might be. So once I attach that file, do I need to send it to another environment, or do I need to switch to the new view, which is this view? I'm going to keep it here. But once I keep scrolling down and I add in all of my detail, then I would click send, and it's going to automatically send that through this approvals app as well. So I don't have to be in the SharePoint document library to be doing things. We always have really multiple choices on where you want to be working with that information. So all depends on, you know, what you're working on, what's going to work best for you. You really want to just kind of look for what your options are going to be. But you do want to make sure that you add that approval icon to the left-hand side here in Microsoft Teams if that's something you're going to be using on a regular basis, because I got to tell you, it has saved me so much time of having to go someplace else to find something. It's just nice to have it right there. But remember, if somebody does send you an approval process through a list or through a SharePoint document library, by default, it notifies you in the activity in Teams. And of course, it comes to the approvals app, and you get notified in Outlook as well. So it's kind of a double process that you'll end up getting. So you definitely want to be taking advantage of these options that you have. But I'm going to jump back into new approval at the top right, new approval request. And on this new approval, instead of doing new request, I'm going to click templates. This is the only one that I have right now that has been added for my entire organization. Down at the bottom, I can switch to the new view where I could go into the basic, I could go into the one that is already here, but you have to have those created for it to be available under the org wide. Now, there is a link here that you can click on that will take you through and show you how you can create those. But I think that that's a feature that IT can actually turn off for some people, because we don't always want everybody to be creating something that is going to be available for everybody within the organization. So it's usually something we want to control, like this department or this group is responsible for those. We can have specific people or groups be responsible. So just so you're aware of the fact that we have this. So when it comes to using Microsoft 365 for your approvals, you can create them in Power Apps, which really does take a good understanding of how that really works. It's a lot more than you might think. Some of them are pretty simple, pretty straightforward, but some of them are definitely a lot more complicated. You would want to get to know those a little bit better. We should actually do a session on that, just to do a more advanced one to show people how to do those. But the other option would be just use the ones that are already built into the application. Different applications are going to have workflows readily available right within the application. Most common is going to be SharePoint. SharePoint is going to be the one that is going to be used the most in either the documents library or within a list. But you can have approvals with a lot of different things, not just files or entries that are made in a list. Very common to use it in forms. It can be done through calendars and a lot of different areas. But we have workflows that can be now used in Microsoft Teams as well. Getting yourself familiar with how the approvals app works is a good idea. Just practice and practice with a coworker. Send things to them and have them send things to you and kind of do some testing before you go live with things. All right. So Matthew, I'm going to send it back to you. We're already out of time today. This time goes by so fast. But just so you could see, we also have, in your handout, you have all this information related to working with all of Microsoft Teams options, your key features within your approvals. It can be used in so many different places. Also in your handout, you'll find some best practices for your approval workflows. As you are creating those, you can do follow-ups and things like that, get reminders if somebody doesn't approve something. There's a lot of things that can be added to those approvals, but done through Power Automate.